Welcome to the Brand Runner podcast, where we discuss marketing trends and tech. There's a lot of talk about the Metaverse and what it will become and its implications from a technology and societal viewpoint. When Apple launched its Vision Pro headset, it did not just launch a product, but also gave a clear green light that VR and headsets were not just a phase. Apple gave a glimpse into what the future of media consumption and social media would be made of. To discuss this topic, I have a special guest today, Charlie Ferguson. Charlie is a seasoned digital brand strategist based in Los Angeles, California. Charlie, you've been launching successful campaign executions for automotive brands, cloud storage solutions, entertainment entities, and travel and leisure companies. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Awesome, thanks for having me.
Recently, you've been producing a lot of insightful content about tech innovations, notably VR, blockchain, and brands, notably on Medium, where your thoughts on the emergence of VR and its impact on culture and creativity can be found under your handle Mains. Link in the show notes. On the personal side, a few years back, I worked on quite a few campaigns under you, and I learned so much about social media marketing, growth marketing, and branded content when branded content was just starting out. It was a fun time. You were right then, and I think the thoughts you are putting out, you're also right today. Let's talk VR and headsets. Can you give a short rundown about where it started and where we are now?
So people don't really realize that VR has been around for a long time, since even the 60s. With the first iteration, some considering the sword of Damocles. But all along the way, the big question that's been asked is like, where is the processing power going to come from? At first it started on computers. You have these big, huge, luggy headsets that were, connected to some CPU. And then as time went on in the 90s, they started playing with the idea of maybe being able to run the processing power off of mobile. And now we're in a situation where semiconductors have gone strong enough where the processing power is coming from the microchip. And so now the headsets are standalone, which is amazing. And, these developments, VR is growing at the same rate that, technological advances are coming. So it's just been interesting to see how the growth of these things are pushing VR.
Very cool. When you look at the stats, VR headsets users are still a minority. There are like 30 million headsets users versus billions of users for smartphones. Why do you think Apple decided to join the race now? And what and when do you think is the path to mass adoption?
Right, that's a great question, actually. And it took a good while to think about Apple and sort of where their place is in technology, because they've been working on a VR device for quite some time. They've even been making a lot of acquisitions from other VR companies. I think at the heart of it, they understand that, the VR itself is going to grow. It's going to be a thing. They want to be a part of that mass adoption. Just like with the iPhone, the way that it compares to other phones, even like, the Android, they want to be sort of part of that. They want to create the zeitgeist and the culture around VR. And so obviously their major competitor is Meta right now. On the other hand, Meta is pushing to kind of build out the infrastructure for the Metaverse. The two companies are very interesting because one is more focused on sort of the technology, maybe the comfort, the sleekness, the style, and trying to develop a culture around the headset itself. That would be Apple. Mm-hmm. And Meta is really trying to build out the infrastructure for how people will communicate, how people will share, how people will interact, what the storytelling will be like specifically, and sort of playing up more the metaverse and having the technology support that as opposed to the technology just supporting sort of the means to get to where these people will now congeal online on the new online, the new, Web3. Um, when it comes to mass adoption, I think it's both are going to be at play in order to get to this place of mass adoption. Video gaming obviously is huge. It's going to take us a while to get to that place, but as people continue to play video games and understand sort of how this technology is going to work to better tell stories and, you know, share ideas, you know, and as the technology kind of grows to support that, mass adoption will happen. Just recently, Meta has opened up its OS system so that other technology companies can build VR headsets. That's only going to continue to grow sort of the usage of those platforms. So I think that as we sort of grow from it being a novelty to more of a utility, that mass adoption will happen.
You know what you said reminds me of a couple of videos I just saw this week that are like, videos that keeps on popping back. Those are both Apple videos. One is this video of Steve Jobs at a conference that get asked like a question by like an engineer and ask why Apple doesn't develop their product with the latest technology. You remember this one? No, yeah, I don't know if you saw it. I'll put it in the show notes so you have it. Okay. It's great because the guy is asking him, it's obviously a little bit aggressive. And the point here is like that Apple is not, it's something that's been happening for a long time in how Apple's been developing their product. They're never really using the latest processor or the latest, like a GPU unit that's just out there that sometimes you will find on the Windows computer but not on Mac computers, And it's always been like a recurrent criticism. And this is like an interview from like the 80s, okay? And the answer to that is that Steve Jobs gave back then is that like often what happens in tech, companies try to figure out how to develop a cool tech and new things before starting with the customer. And he says everything starts with the customer experience. So his answer is like you need to figure out what are the needs first and address the needs instead of trying to figure out to develop a technology and how you adapt that technology to the needs. And I thought it was such a great answer, And then I saw another video, which is actually not an Apple video. It's from the former CEO of Windows, and you will understand why now he's the former CEO of Windows, which is an interview of him reacting to the announcement of the first iPhone. The interviewer said, "What did you think when you first saw the first iPhone?" And this former CEO said, well, he started to laugh, and he was like, well, I don't know where they're going with this because, this phone doesn't have, like a keyboard, what is this? We've been making Windows Phone for so many years. We sell like X million phones in the world, blah, blah, blah. How many phones is iPhone selling today? 0. So it's interesting to see that on one hand, their core value, which is let's figure out how to give what the customer needs, is also a little bit, clashing with like, let's be innovators and let's make cool products and let's make an iPhone, and let's make like a VR headset where there is no yet mass adoption, which means there is no real, you might think there is no need today, but yet they still have that special sauce to figure out, what's coming and like you say, like being part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be sort of that push and pull from both angles. It's just I think for so long, Apple's found that balance right now, and I can even see this new the Vision Pro. I mean, as it's launched, there is sort of a question mark: are we putting the cart before the horse with that particular technology? Just because there doesn't seem to be as much. There's a lot of cool things right now with it, but is that product something that at this point is ready for adoption? You know what I mean? And so I think that they'll hang around. Obviously, they have the money. They have a huge ecosystem of people that are ready to kind of build apps. They were building them for the phone. They will be building them for VR products, and it's just sort of striking that right balance. And I don't think anybody has really found out specifically what it is, but I think the more that people sort of spend time with, that products spend time in the VR space, they're going to, both brands and people are going to sort of see sort of how immersive storytelling is going to change, change the way that people share, change what's being communicated. And I think that when people see that richer storytelling is there, it's going to be hard to go back. We're going to hit a threshold where it's going to be hard to go back to watching. It's going to be hard to kind of go back to playing video games outside of the VR. It's going to be hard to even at some point, think about communicating online the same way you do like on a Facebook post or something like that. Like it's going to be so natural to kind of have those interactions within the metaverse that, things will change. It's going to be hard to look back and be like, I can't believe we did it like that before.
Yeah. It's like when we switch from the silent movies era to the talkies and black and white to color, and even like you think at the beginning of the internet and try to explain what is the internet in the 90s to people that are not, techies, and then
exactly,
and boom,
for sure.
So, talking about the metaverse and interactions, in one of your latest articles you published on Medium titled "Social Engagement in the Metaverse is Challenging Conventional Notions of Branding and Ownership." I'm putting the link in the show notes. You talk a lot about social media in the metaverse, and I would like to read our listeners the following quote that I found super interesting. As social media evolves to include the metaverse, it's further empowering consumers to create and share content relevant to brands in the form of user-generated experiences, UGs. Can you put in context how brands can or will be able to leverage the metaverse to interact with their audience or customers, and talk about these user-generated experiences?
Yeah, so all of this is really sort of coming together the same way that social media initially came together. I remember like early 2000s, brands really struggling to understand that the brand voice, conversations around the brand were no longer under their specific control. They were now shared with their consumers. It's like, no matter whether you like it or not, or know or like it or not, your brand is being talked about online by your consumers or people who may or may not like your brand. And so these people, these potential consumers or just people in general are have something to say about your brand, right? And so because sort of legacy brands found it really difficult in the early 2000s to get their mind around, what are we going to, somebody's saying something negative about our brand. Somebody's saying this or somebody's saying that. Somebody's saying something great. How do I get in contact with that person? Because that was sort of out of their hands. It was a real, social media became, social media managers' jobs were kind of born out of that particular problem. So as social media has evolved, consumers really kind of controlling the messaging around the brand has now infiltrated the metaverse. There's people that are in social media, there are people that are in the metaverse that are expressing their ideas and feelings about particular brands, and not just saying things. This isn't necessarily just recorded conversations, but they're able to create virtual experiences right now. And so the example that I gave is how a person developed sort of a faux brand for McDonald's called McDonald's, where it was set up where it was like a McDonald's actual franchise, but it was existed in the metaverse, where like everything down to the smallest detail and even more was sort of being developed by this person, and people were interacting with it, and it became sort of a virtual playground. Whether McDonald's knows about this or not, again, people have something to say about it. And so now, because especially through the way that Horizon Worlds is set up, anybody can kind of build their virtual worlds. Well, when people are passionate one way or another about something, they're building virtual worlds that are many times brands. And so that's where the user generated experiences aspect came to be, I just actually saw. I don't know if you're familiar with Helldivers. This is a new game. I haven't played it yet, but I have a brother who's just a complete gamer who was saying like, Charlie, you need to get Helldivers. It's an amazing game. Lo and behold, there's already people building virtual experiences that sort of are overlaid with the Helldivers game. I guess they just sort of just developed a virtual experience and kind of like mimicked what's happening in Helldivers. And so that's just another example of how like people are just sort of like, brand ownership is now infiltrated. Brand ownership by consumers is now infiltrated the metaverse. It's just something that brands are going to have to get their heads around and understand how to leverage. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves back in, the early 2000s, trying to wrestle social media again.
This example is very interesting because it reminds me a little bit about some of the digital licensing you start to see on the blockchain, So the same way you mentioned, like they make a fake franchise, but it's very possible that in the future, then those digital franchise will also be, additional digital revenues for those brands. And if you look like
Absolutely.
in the NFTs, like it's already happening. You have a lot of partnerships of artists with brands that are licensing. Like, I'm thinking, for instance, of like Nike doing their I forgot what it's called. They did
The Nike ID.
Yes, they did Nike idea, but they also did like digital product that you cannot wear for your avatar.
They call it digital.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Next question is that there are a lot of companies doing branded content type of things already, like live concerts, live streaming, movie release experiences. Why do you think they're doing it now, and who watches it, and who are the consumers here? Based on what we mentioned before, is that like you have much more reach, like on the traditional quote unquote like smartphones and like Web 2 than on the headset and the VR platforms.
Yeah. No, I find it interesting. Like a lot of these concerts are being launched a lot on Fortnite, which is amazing. Some on Roblox. And even Meta sort of has I think they have a tie up with iHeartMedia where you can go into the Horizon worlds and like different artists, the Roots, Post Malone, a lot of different artists are there where you kind of sort of see recordings of their concerts, but sometimes live. I find the ones in Fortnite are amazing because like you are not only like watching the concert, but like you're playing the game, and there's all these like just digital sort of experiences that you can launch there, just kind of bubbly, cool things that you can do. Um, you know, I you ask who the consumers are. It's a lot of times it's the gamers. It's the youth that are still playing games. Because what happens is, as it sort of works with any brand. I mean, once you have an audience, once you're able to kind of garner an audience, you can kind of push to them anything. You know what I mean? Like, the brand is not just a product; it's sort of like an affinity. People not only love playing, video games, but they love the friendships that they've developed there. They love going there to hang out. Those are the people, and that's the same thing that you're doing at a concert. So, I mean, I think it's great. Like, these platforms have kind of built up these audiences and are using sort of the metaverse to kind of create this platform where they can kind of share other things that are sort of within the long tail of who this consumer might be. But the I think that the sort of the big question is where is that threshold going to be? Because there's all these young people that are engaging with these games and concerts and things in the metaverse, and at some point they're going to become adults, and they have already sort of adopted how to use these platforms and this technology to kind of do the things that they do on an everyday basis. That's going to translate into that mass adoption that we mentioned earlier.
We'll add to what you just said that, I have a twin brother. His name is Sebastian. He's also based in Los Angeles, and he's like a virtual reality expert. And he does a lot of the production. Like, he's more of the technical guy slash producer who does the whole technical setup. He's like kind of like a DP for VR, and he does a lot of those big captations. Like, he's done things for like U2, like full on live shows for U2 that is captured with VR, and you will have like, I don't know how many VR cameras on stage, next to the stage. And then you have this whole post-production process, which is insane, And I'm always wondering, like, why, like, it's great. As an experience, it's great. But when you look at the pool of the people that will see it, you could do exactly the same thing today on the traditional, more of a traditional way with like like regular, like a 2D camera, right? And do like a live show, like we see it now on Netflix, for instance. They're starting to do live shows, or like on YouTube, but give that as a bonus if you buy certain type of package. I don't know, But no, here they decide to do it as a VR, So why do it this way instead of doing it a more traditional way where you will reach more people, more viewers? So I can only think that they want to, and I'm thinking about them, but you can think also about any of those experiences. Or I can only think that it's to foster more brand association with being technology or technology oriented or modern, or if you personally really feel that you want to be part of that ecosystem, even though it means reaching less people, because eventually the expense will be still there. It will be cheaper to make, and from a media standpoint, there is also like a cost if you want to push it.
Right. I think that, and I understand what you're saying too. I think that, the I don't want to say advantage of VR, because it's really just sort of at that point, if you're deciding to do a concert and launching it over VR, then you're doing that because you're looking for a different experience altogether. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times with sort of, there's the VR concerts, metaverse concerts. Like in the metaverse, obviously you're there, you're in your avatar, you're seeing other people in their avatars. So the same elements from like a Fortnite game, you're basically carrying those into a concert setting, whether it be with, Diplo or Drake, or, whatever the case may be. You're just sort of in those virtual environments and able to kind of like exploit and leverage the sort of the gamification of that experience. But at the same time, if you are sort of just going virtual with no metaverse, and I'm not sure what the advantage might be as opposed to just sort of filming it like you normally would.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So the next one is more of a Web3 type of question. We talk a lot about the metaverse and the future of social media, but we also hear a lot about whether it will be Meta's metaverse or some other kinds of metaverses. Even Neil Stephenson, the guy who wrote Snow Crash and coined the term metaverse, is building his own decentralized social platform called Lamina One. I don't know if you heard about it. And so what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there will be different metaverses, or Meta will be too big to fail?
No, I think that this really sort of lends itself to the interoperability aspect of the metaverse. I think that interoperability is sort of, that's sort of the reach and the goal. So when you say, will there be different metaverses, I when I sort of interface with that question, it's like asking, will there be different internets? You know what I mean? I think that all of the metaverses will tie in. Like if you have an NFT,
maybe,
and within that,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Maybe you can touch briefly for our audience that might not understand what does this interoperability means.
Right. Okay. So that's okay. So that's it. Let me specify. So it's sort of like if you have an NFT that you carry in your wallet, right? So if you sort of have that minted, you're able to hold on to your ID going from one metaverse to another metaverse, from one platform to another platform. It's almost similar to like when you are being authenticated when you're going to a website or using an app, and they authenticate you using your LinkedIn, using your Google, using your Twitter, using your TikTok or something like that, we're able to kind of take your specific profile to a particular web property. So I think that it's kind of interesting because, like, no offense to, like, people that are big blockchain users and NFT mentors, but the general public's wondering, like, what are the hell are we supposed to do with these things? Why is it such a big deal? I think the blockchain, all this Web3 stuff is sort of like leveraging itself, because if we have sort of a blockchain underpinning, like some type of blockchain sort of underpinning where the Web3 is going, what are we building these experiences on top of, or what are we overlaying them, then we will be able to sort of use the properties of an NFT to basically leverage in being able to kind of pass from one metaverse property to the next metaverse property. And as we are able to go from one experience to the next, maintaining who we are, maintaining a lot of our digital assets, we now have what would be sort of a real new Web3.
Yeah.
It's just sort of interesting. There's so many different tribes out there. I feel like, the internet's all like, it's like a bunch of big gangs now. Some people are like part of the AI gang. Some people are part of the blockchain gang. Some people, I'm in the metaverse gang. We're like, let's go. But like, it's all going, it's like literally all of it has to work together.
Yeah,
it's sort of, everything is really so it's almost like a play, like everything that has like a mystery ending. These technologies are converging, and as they converge, we will, what's a new Web3 will be realized, but they will work together.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. Maybe I will jump one question forward because it's kind of like similar topic, and maybe you can touch on the Fediverse, and maybe you can explain briefly what it is and give your thoughts on that, because it's very connected to what you just said.
Yeah. So the Fediverse is interesting because they're sort of like decentralized metaverse environments. The web is, I think, people. So they say like necessity is the mother of invention. I think the Fediverse is basically kind of built out of that. Social media is sort of going to change. I think, obviously there will be like, I don't think Facebook is going away or Twitter is going away or any, these places are going away. But as I think a need for communities to sort of be true to themselves is sort of that need. And that mother of invention where the Fediverse is being built out of. Because I think that people want to sort of be able to kind of build virtual spaces where they don't have to kind of they don't want to have to sort of deal with the general public. I think that we may be moving to a situation where, I don't want to say tribalism, but I guess for lack of a better word, there's going to be more sort of environments that people feel are more authentic to their truer selves or their truer needs or truer wants. And sort of having sort of these decentralized environments that can be accessed again through like an NFT where sort of people can pop from one web property to the next, one metaverse property to the next, while still holding on to their digital assets, their digital identity. I think that's where the Fediverse is kind of coming out of. I mean, as it is right now, I mean, there's so much control over sort of what's in your feeds and social media, what content that you're getting. It's just sort of like a fire hose now. We're just getting hit with a minutia of like, just like, it's like, you have your aunts and uncles, and then you have like, other digital properties. I mean, other like brands trying to sell you stuff. And it's just like a big fire hose. And, there needs, I think that people are kind of getting to a place where it's like, I want to kind of control my own social sort of environments. And that's where the Fediverse is kind of coming out of.
Very cool. What are your thoughts on Threads, and are you on it?
What's on what? Oh, Threads? No, I am not on Threads. There's a couple. I mean, I know that, obviously my background is in social media, but at some point, I started to kind of putting a line in the sand. And some of these virtual environments, like I just really don't need that. I really nobody, I really don't need that. I feel like information that happens is so readily available that just social media has become a very duplicitous environment.
Yeah.
I'm not on Threads, and who knows if it survives. I just feel like there's so much cash to burn out there that you can kind of like keep stuff on a lifeline no matter how long. And I really think that, do you notice that Threads came out around the same time when this big fight between Musk and Zuckerberg was supposed to happen? Zuckerberg was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that Threads is really just sort of his answer to, him trying to one up Elon Musk.
Interesting.
Who's currently, as of last week, now all of a sudden richer because of stock prices than Zuckerberg. So I guess he has, it's just like this ongoing public fight that we're seeing.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, not on Threads. Although I'm obviously a fan of Meta, but not on Threads. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. You mentioned in your article that many products for the metaverse may only be fully realized in the next 10 to 15 years. Can you project?
Yeah.
And maybe you can also talk about what are the major technological obstacles to reach there.
No, that's a good question. Actually, that's not like I quoted that. That's a quote from Meta's board. Actually, they or the so they're basically saying, hey, look, the technology to kind of really realize Metaverse for how they view it to be, what they're trying to strive for, is not yet here. I mean, and a lot of that has to do with the computational power and the processing power. Just semiconductors aren't there yet, but I think the convergence of that and AI is going to sort of at some point, whether it be 10 or 15 years, going to make that happen. But it's primarily the processing power that is still lacking.
I think there's also like an additional point. It's something I read in that book we talked about over LinkedIn, the Metaverse, and how it will revolutionize everything, by Matthew Ball. I don't know if you remember this book we talked about. It's a book that was written by Matthew Ball, who's the former head of innovation at Amazon. And he talks about what are the next technology blockers for those type of technology. And one of the main points he makes is about how the internet is built today, like from a technical standpoint of how the packets are being moving. Like right now, when we talk to each other, it feels like it's live, right? I talk, you receive it, and it's like you're in front of me. But really what's happening in the background is that you have an info packet that comes from a server that gets copied on another server, and then you get it. And then when you talk, that packet is sent to one server, getting copied to another server, I get it. So it's not instant. And what he's saying is that in terms of speed and bandwidth and that data transmission, you cannot have it this way. It has to be one. It has to be like one packet that goes move from you to me straight, and that's it. Not, that in between server interaction. So he says that's the main blocker today, because basically the internet, the way it's built and how information is being transmitted, is the same as what it used to be like, when web was first created, basically. You know what I mean? So fundamentally, that's the technology that needs to change in terms of data speed in order to allow for this huge amount of data. Like like when we talk about VR, we're not talking just about this. We're not just talking about what's in front of you. We're talking about so many different angles, right? So it's every angle has its own set of data, of sound and visual and stuff. So that's one of the main blockers for him. I thought it was really interesting when I read the book. I was like, wow, okay, so when is that happening? Because that's also something else in addition to the computational powers you're talking about.
Right. We're on our way.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions I had. I'm just wondering if you have any last thing that's popping in your mind you want to mention.
I just I think that I want to sort of like, just double down on the idea that the convergence of all this is really important. I think that even with AI, like I joke about, the different tribes and stuff like that, of the Web3. But even with AI, the ability for people to kind of more easily create their user generated experiences, create their virtual environments. Because, like right now with AI, you can create articles in seconds, you can create even websites in seconds, you can create songs in seconds. Now being able to create virtual environments with ease is going to definitely be able to kind of like, is going to kind of enhance the amount of customization. People are drawn to being able to kind of customize things and sort of represent themselves in different environments, because it helps to kind of tell their story and tell who they are. And, AI growing to a point where they're more easily able to do that and share is going to be, I think, huge. There's so much, man. I feel like this conversation, although it's gone about an hour, could go so much longer, but yeah, we may have to do a part 2 of this at some point.
Cool. Before we close, can you give us your best link, and I will put them in the show notes?
My best link is the Mainz one. So it's Mainz on Twitter, and you can read my stuff on medium.com/Mainz, and I should have more stuff coming soon.
Cool. Charlie, thank you so much for doing this. This conversation was super insightful. I learned a lot, and let's do that again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, baby. And it was so cool. I'm glad to hear that you're growing up into a man that has kids and wife, and so far from where I know you to be. But that's because we took too long to connect again. So I'm so happy for you, and your show is awesome, and can't wait to do it again, man.
Thank you, Charlie.